listen. Can anyone guess what that is? That is the sound of a female spectacled bear and her cub in the wild. Unfortunately, their populations are declining, and it's so cute, and they may become extinct. So habitat fragmentation, as you can see in this photo, and illegal land trafficking is a huge problem. And they're destroying the land by illegal agriculture. And what is actually happening is the bears aren't getting enough food, and they're actually starving to death. But we do believe if we can find these bears and we can find what resources they need, we really believe we can make a difference and help this bear fatten up, for one, and survive. And with the support here today and with WCN and everybody around the world, we really think that we can help keep this bear in the wild. So many people haven't actually heard about spectacled bears or don't actually know anything about spectacled bears, but so many people know about Paddington Bear. I mean, who here doesn't know about Paddington Bear, the cute little bear from deepest, darkest Peru? So that's actually the spectacled bear. And as you can see here, the markings on their face, they're also known as Andean bears, but we use spectacled bears because that's what the people in our villages say in Spanish. But they're named spectacled for the rings around their eyes, and it actually looks like they're wearing glasses. So very little is known, as Rebecca said, about spectacled bears, but what we do know is that they are in small populations from Venezuela all the way down to Bolivia. And as Rebecca mentioned, I grew up in Canada and I spent a lot of time studying black bears, but when I attended a lot of the conferences, I realized how little was known about these bears. I mean, there's 8 bear species, and really we hear about pandas, polars, and the other 2, but what about the other 4? And so that really interests me, and as Rebecca mentioned, I set off to Peru. This is a typical spectacled bear habitat. Dense, it's cloudy, it's wet, it's cold, and so it's really difficult to see these bears. But we were really lucky enough to have found them in this type of ecosystem, a really dry, very steep terrain. It's not an easy terrain, as a couple of you here know. But it allows us to see these bears. And so when we found them, we were able to observe them in the wild, and that was really big for science and for the species. But they also inhabit low habitat, this desert, hot, crazy area that is very different to what I was used to in Canada, but the best part about it is we could actually see them. So about almost 10 years ago now, I set off on an adventure of my life thinking I'm going to go down and start my PhD in Peru, and I was a little bit naive at the time, but it all worked out, so I'm really happy I went. But I met Javier Vallejos, and he was an ex-hunter conservationist, an incredible animal tracker. So we set off looking for bears. I mean, I don't know what we were thinking, but we went by horse, we went by foot, we did whatever we could. And we were trying to access the cloud forest up in the high mountains, knowing that that's most likely where we're going to find them. So we tried to get as much equipment as we could, carried it up there, hoping we could spend a couple of months. But to get there, we had to cross the desert and the dry areas where there's no water. And this is a photo of Javier and his son, and we ended up a lot of days without food and water, and you can't get very far without water. So we took Jose's hat off, and we took a mud puddle, and we were stuffing the water and the mud through his hat to filter out the water, and we drank it. I have to say it was pretty salty water, but we survived, and we got more time out there. But it's challenging working in a place like this. Without water and without supplies, we had to carry a lot of equipment to get up there, so it made our work difficult, but we were happy. But as Rebecca mentioned, one day we were trying to reach these high mountains, and we were sitting there having our porridge, just looking as we always do for whatever animals we can see, and all of a sudden, there's this black dot up on the cliff, and it just started walking down, and we're like, what is that? Is that a tyra, or what kind of animal could that possibly be? As it got closer and closer and closer, we were looking through the binoculars, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm seeing some white markings on their face. Now, this could not be happening. Is this for real? And sure enough, it was a spectacled bear up in the cliffs in the dry forest where no one knew they existed. So this was a pretty exciting and pretty emotional moment for us. And so I can't explain what that felt like, so I decided to throw in a video so you could see that. This was going to be the first film that we had taken, or the first video footage we have of this species. mean, how can you not love that, right? It's pretty adorable. And what we realized very early on is how curious they were about us. And so because they were living up in these cliffs, there wasn't a lot of human-animal interaction. So unlike a lot of the other WCM partners, we don't have a conflict as such. I mean, we have an impact problem, but not the conflict. And so this is our very first bear that we met. Her name was Laura. And we sometimes wondered who was watching who. We tried to keep our distance to make sure we didn't have any behavioral problems, but she kept following us, and she kept getting closer and closer and closer. And you can see in this photo Javier's trying to get away, but it didn't work so well. I mean, I have to say I did enjoy it, but she was a really special bear, but I'm sure she was making faces at us because we have so many bears with her, so many photos with her tongue out. But what was really fascinating is she showed us where they live. And so you don't go to Yosemite expecting to look up and see a grizzly bear crossing over the cliffs, right? You expect to see people. And that was the same for us. So we weren't looking in the right places. We weren't looking up on these cliffs. We didn't know they were up in habitat like that. So that was the start to our project, really. And we realized a lot of it was to reach up. She's trying to reach some honey up in the cliffs. And so a lot of their food is hidden up into these cliffs. And they also use it to the landscape to move around. So it's just how it is. This is blurry because it's a video, but I just wanted to give you some context and what the habitat actually looks like. Mm-hmm. So this is a bear down climbing to get to some of, you can see up there on the right-hand side, there's some snails under an overhang. So she's trying to reach them. But you don't expect to see bears on cliffs like this. It's pretty nerve-wracking actually watching it, wondering, oh gosh, is she going to fall? It's a lot of effort for one snail, but there's a lot of protein, so I guess it's worth the effort. And the other thing I just loved about spectacle bears is they're always smiling. I mean, does that not look like a smiling bear? They're smiling at us. But the one thing that I feel that we don't share in common is our love for doing abdominal workouts. And this bear loves doing sit-ups. Not something I love doing. And because these bears, unlike black bears and grizzly bears, don't hibernate, they actually spend a lot of time sleeping in the middle of the day. The downfall to that, I mean, that's good for them, but for us, we end up having our team sleeping who think that it's a good idea to imitate what these spectacle bears are doing. But what we realized very early on is that we weren't going to be able to protect and save these animals if we don't engage the community. So we realized we had to work really close with these. So this was my first field team. We spent, for probably the first 5 years, probably over 200 days of the year in the field trying to find these bears, trying to learn as much as we possibly could about them. And the first year of our organization, we built a conservation center, and that was a way of engaging the community and also letting them know that we were here to stay and we were serious. And the community was so excited. I mean, you have to imagine that they've been living here for a long time, and they had no idea that there was bears in this area. And so as soon as they heard that there was bears, it wasn't this, oh, who cares, whatever. They were so excited. So we had publications all over the local towns and the big cities saying, the land of wild bears. So the first thing to do was get more eyes out into the field. So we set up a lot of camera traps, trying to learn as much as we possibly could. And seeing that the bears are always smiling, I would have thought they would love to have their photos taken. But this bear in particular, Marco, he's got his bum in a little tiny water hole. So he's obviously trying to cool himself down. But what I didn't realize is bears actually don't like to be filmed while they're in the shower. So I thought I'd put a little video of what happens when they get out of their shower. He's just crawling out of the water hole. we realized that they want a little bit more privacy during that time. So we've tried to respect that from time to time, but it's pretty hard when we only have 5 water holes in the entire field site. But what we did learn was that this food here is called the sapote. It is the most important thing for them, and basically without that, they will not survive in this ecosystem. It's nothing exciting. It's more like an avocado, a thick, fatty type food that I've tried, but tastes more like stinky feet and avocado mixed together, if you could even do that. It's not very good. But the other thing that gets them through the winter is the Paseo tree. It's a really dry tree, so yeah, similar to a beaver. The bear also eats a tree, a really dry, hard tree that takes a long time for them to open. But once they get it open, they spend about 2 to 3 weeks feeding on just one tree. And they don't just eat around the edge or the top or the middle, they eat the entire tree. As you can see here, it's just exploded. That was a female with her 2 cubs. But it keeps them going throughout the winter. As I mentioned earlier, they don't actually hibernate. So while they may not get a lot of calories from this, it's enough to get them through. So what I thought was really interesting was, one, it's really difficult for them to open. So the females are ripping them open and then they're pulling pieces out and passing it over to their cubs. But then once they leave their mothers, which they do just after a year, about 1 year and 3 months, how are they going to open these trees? And what we actually noticed as we studied the animal more is the females are actually opening the tree, feeding on the tree, and being the wonderful moms that they are, they're actually leaving a little bit of the tree so that the cubs can come back over, or the subadults can come back and feed on that tree. So this is a video of just one of the trees that was opened by a female. I mean, could you imagine eating a tree? Not very nice, is it? I think the stinky fruit is probably better. And what we also realized is that these bears, on their downtime, other than sleeping, they seem to really engage in recreation. And so I like to put this up as a mother dropping her kid off at the kiddie pool while she goes to her relaxing spa. It's a tough life. But actually, in all honesty, it really is a tough life, and especially for females with cubs. As I mentioned, they rely heavily on the sapote fruit, which is a food that's really hard for them to reach. But also we noticed that when we collared our first male bear, that they actually walk a lot. And in this type of habitat, the rocks are really hot and really sharp. And when we put the first collar on, we realized one of the male bears walked 150 kilometers in 4 days. So they are spending a lot of time trying to reach these particular areas. And one of the most important things, as I said, was the sapote fruit. But the problem that we have right now is that a lot of the people are using it to cook on. They need the firewood, and of course we can't tell them don't cook and just go buy a stove, because that's not the reality of a lot of people there. So, and the other problem is we have illegal land trafficking. So people are stealing the land, dividing it up, and then they're just bulldozing the forest for agriculture. And that's what's keeping these bears thin. So they are not accessing the food that they need. And so this is what we're seeing across the board for the females. And in our 10 years now in this field area, there has been 28 cubs born, and only 4 of the cubs we've seen make it to 1 year. So while this female did what she could to keep this cub alive, she didn't make it, and the cub didn't make it. So, sorry. Cubs like this just didn't even have a chance. So the female just didn't have enough fat to carry her through and didn't make it past the 3rd month. So this was the last video we had of this cub. I'm sure as it is challenging to look at a video like that, it's even harder in the field and seeing this happen. So we feel that we live in a panic. So we knew right away we needed to work with the community. We needed to get them to work with to stop the illegal land trafficking and trying to get the people to collect their firewood in different locations during certain times of the year. And we realized we have to work really closely with them. It's not just going in for the occasional meetings. We need to create relationships with these people, and we need them to understand and respect and learn to love the bears as we do. And so one of the programs we started, as you'll see downstairs at our typo, is the felted products. So we started with little spectacle bears that at the beginning looked like little monsters, but I think they've actually turned out really quite lovely. So in memory of Laura, we started making little Laura bears and little David bears. And it's an alternative livelihood for these people. The women don't have jobs, and as you saw, they live in poverty. And to help support our programs and to get their kids in school, this was a great way. So please, if you can, support this project. But we've also been working on a program called the Forest Guardian, which San Diego Zoo actually helped us develop, and that was to replant the forest again and try to get more sapote trees out there, as we realized they were really important for them. And we know that this program works. After 4 months of this bear coming down and feeding on sapote, it went from that starving-looking bear to this very fat bear that couldn't move. So thank you. But the question still remains, where are these bears? And so while we've been studying a very small population of bears, the question is still out there. Where are they? We can't protect them if we don't know where they are, and that is huge for us. We need to get more teams out there, we need to get more camera traps out there, and we need to find these bears. And so, as Rebecca mentioned, we are a new partner at WCN, and last year was the first time I was here as a guest speaker, and just with the support that we have received in this last year, it has been outstanding, and we have been able to do so much more than we were ever able to do. So thank you, everyone, for that support. But this was something we needed for a very long time. We finally got our first truck, and that allowed us to reach these incredible areas that we didn't even know existed. As a result, we found new habitat, new cloud forest that had bear sign, bear scats. We saw mountain tapir, and there's only a few hundred left in Peru, so we realized there's so much more to do, and we really want to be able to connect our field site with other areas to create one larger protected area. So right away, we got up there and we've been installing new camera traps. So I think the key message today is we really want to give bears like this a better chance. And we really feel that together, with the support of everybody here and around the world, we can make a difference and help keep these bears in the wild. So if you're interested in supporting our project, visit our website, like us on Facebook. We have an Instagram account, and if you could make a donation, we are open to anything. So thanks very much for listening.